Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Caleb Nelson Amaker. I'm the Director of Youth and Family Ministries here at St. Mark's, and I wanted to thank all of you for joining us for our summer trip celebration today. Before we get too far in, I'd like to tell you a little bit about this trip, which started for me in the spring of 2022. I had a conversation with Steve Balzell right before Michelle's sabbatical. And we talked about the possibility of taking a group of youth to Navajoland. And I said, that sounds great. And I said, there's a lot of planning that needs to go into that. Let's talk 2023. And we agreed to go on an exploratory trip. We went out in Veterans Day of 2022. We stayed for 3 days at St. Christopher's Mission. We met the senior warden. We met mission staff members and several community members, along with Kit Arrington and Steve Balzell. In January, we met to decide whether or not we thought the trip was viable. Spoiler alert, we absolutely did. We wanted the youth of St. Mark's to experience the beauty of God in a different way, the beauty of the land in a different way, and the beauty of the people of the community we have interacted with. And thus, the Navajoland trip was born. But building a program from scratch is not a small task, particularly when most of your references and resources are in a remote area 1,700 miles away. We spent the next 7 months meeting regularly, often weekly. We talked about accommodations and food. We talked about geographic locations that we wanted to visit. We talked about the community we experienced. We talked about what it might look like to prepare and educate our youth and ourselves about the Navajoland community. How to be respectful of entering into another cultural space. We talked to other Episcopal churches who had visited the summer before. 2 youth ministers in the Diocese of Pennsylvania were particularly helpful. We wanted to plant seeds for relationship building, with the hope that this summer trip to St. Christopher's would not be the last summer trip to St. Christopher's. Even early, we knew that flexibility was going to be the name of the game. I remember saying at a meeting that we should plan as best we could and be aware that we didn't know what we didn't know. We told each other and the youth that we needed to be open to outcomes. This proved itself true even the first night after a 14-hour travel day. Arriving at St. Christopher's close to midnight Eastern Standard Time, we found that the rooms that Kit and I had planned to stay in had a ventilation system that was broken. We slept on the couches in the community center that first night. This also showed true as we came to understand that our hosts had a different sense of time and presence than we had assumed walking in. We came with hour-by-hour plans, how long it would take to this venue or that, how long we assumed a project would take. And very quickly, these gave way to new plans. The tiny houses we had planned to paint were mostly finished. That led way to helping to clean the local cemetery, honoring Navajo custom around the dead. We planned a day to pack boxes of food and go into the reservation. This quickly became 2 days of unpacking boxes. Our contacts who went to get the food found that there was a second shipment coming, with twice as much food as we had planned in about half the organization. Being flexible wasn't always easy. We didn't always get it perfect. But I truly believe that God showed up on our trip because of that in ways that I never would have anticipated. Our group went to 2 museums in the area, one of which was the Navajo Nation Museum that we visited on our first day in Window Rock, Arizona. The museum has information on historic and modern Navajo figures. We saw the pictures of the current president of the Navajo Nation next to an exhibit tracking various treaties signed by the United States and the Navajo, most of which had been broken by the United States. It also included an art gallery dedicated to local artists, representing community struggle with alcoholism. Immediately next to that, a photography exhibit of the Navajo Code Talkers. All of this brought insights and images to our experience before we even laid our head down on the first day. But for me, the part of our trip that I will cherish most was time with the people of St. Christopher's. We began each morning doing morning prayer with Nate, who works for the Bluff Post Office, and Margaret, the St. Christopher's senior warden. I got to hear each member of our group leading a prayer or a reading throughout the course of the week. We learned beading from Diane, who was one of the staff members who took care of our hospitality. We played Uno with her son Clinton, the groundskeeper. We met Irene, a local author and poet, who read us some of her works, including about her experience being forcibly removed from her family to attend a boarding school. I am extremely grateful that we were able to take this trip together. I'm grateful to Charlie Rupp and Mary Nesnick, our chaperones, and Kit Arrington, our trip leader. Shepherding other people's children can, on occasion, be tiring. It can, on occasion, be difficult. It can, on occasion, be frustrating. And I'm extremely grateful for the grace and kindness of each of our adult leaders. I'm grateful to our participants, Ella and Jaya, William, Victor, and Ibby, for leaning into this incredible experience. You should all be proud of how well you carried yourselves in this new space. Proud of what you learned and proud of what you accomplished. I'm also grateful to you, the St. Mark's community, for all of the ways in which you supported our trip, financially, emotionally, spiritually. Together, you made it possible for this group of young people to have an experience of God in the world that they will never forget.
trip right now to drop their older brother Luca off at college, but they have joined us by video. That fingers crossed, we're gonna see if that works. A couple of slides in.
Two things I will always remember about Navajoland is the amazing sunset from the mountains and the amount of fun we had unloading the food boxes. During the beginning part of our trip, the youth and I decided to take a hike up a mountain behind St. Christopher's. I remember the hike being really tiring because we had just eaten dinner and the mountain was pretty steep. However, once we got to the top of the mountain, it was beautiful, just breathtaking. The sunset was resting on top of Another one of my favorite parts was actually right after we came back from that hike. It was because one of the
Good. Started from scratch.
two things I will always remember about Navajoland is the amazing sunset from the mountains and the amount of fun we had unloading the food boxes. During the beginning part of our trip, the youth and I decided to take a hike up a mountain behind St. Christopher's. I remember the hike being really tiring because we had just eaten dinner and the mountain was pretty steep. However, once we got to the top of the mountain, it was beautiful, just breathtaking. The sunset was resting on top of another mountain that was across from us, and it looked like one of those postcards you would see in a store whenever you're visiting a place or a different country. Another one of our favorite parts was actually right after we came back from that hike. It was because one of the food loads had just arrived and we needed to unload it before heading back inside to go to bed. And we were all a little tired from that climb, but in the end, we had a great time. We would joke about why there were so many canned tomatoes, or why are there two different types of beef, especially joking about why the flour was the heaviest out of all of them. But even after when we were doing inventory, we had to laugh about when we counted all the canned soups wrong, and there were actually 2 layers of soup in each box. We would then had to recount all the canned soup boxes so that we could get the correct inventory. While these parts may have just been my favorite, I enjoyed the whole trip and I can't wait for St. Mark's to go again.
Hi, my name is Jaya Madhook, and I went to Navajoland this summer for a church mission trip. In Navajoland, my group cleaned out a cemetery, made jewelry with beads and juniper tree seeds, and swam in a lake with a pretty strong current and mountain climbed a couple of times. While I was there, I made a list of things I wanted to bring back into my everyday life. 2 of those things were to make jewelry more and be brave enough to do things I was afraid of. The reason I say make jewelry more is because during a jewelry making workshop, I felt confident in my work and, well, I wanted to wear it all the time. The reason I say be brave is because, well, I'm kind of scared of the water, and maybe watching Jaws didn't help with that. While I was in Navajoland, I went to a lake, knowing I'd be scared, but I ended up having a really good time. Also, I'm not really active, and mountain climbing is pretty difficult. Anyways, the point is, I had a great time, and I can't wait for the next mission trip.
Culture is extremely important to them, and it was a privilege to assist them by cleaning their graveyard and participating in their prayers spoken in Navajo. In general, it was great to be able to be of service and help the Navajo, learning and interacting with them every day. Another component of the trip that I appreciated was exposing myself to new surroundings. In this case, to the very different environment that is Bluff, Utah. The land is gorgeous, and I had a blast hiking over the mountains and rocks across the desert. I especially loved visiting Bears Ears National Monument, where we saw ruins from an ancient civilization. I loved the scenery overall and couldn't stop taking photos.
And one of those things that I said was just being aware of other cultures. Because while we were on the trip, even though it was a service trip, I just thought we were working the entire time. And we had more breaks to just talk to people in the community. West Museum, we had this settlement of the ruins of them, and they rebuilt this meeting place. It's basically just a hole in the ground called a kiva, and they would go in there to do ceremonies and just to have community meetings. And so I thought that was pretty cool. And the most meaningful part of the trip to me was helping clear out the cemetery, because in their culture, once somebody dies, it's not really them anymore. It's just a body. I'm not allowed to go in there and touch anything, have to trust other people. This was really an honor that they put so much faith in us to take care of us.
And from the things I wrote down to get back to BC, the one that stuck out to me was being aware of indigenous practices and customs. Before the trip, I had little information on the early impact of colonization or force for Native Americans to learn English at a very young age in boarding schools. From the museums we visited, the history became a lot more complicated than the facts I had known. Like the impact of alcoholism on their community, which is still relevant. Also, how their language aided the U.S. in World War II, making it impossible to decode messages being sent between. But I also enjoyed learning about the customs in informal settings, like seeing with other people on the trip through service and games was also something I wanted to keep. Like cleaning out a cemetery and playing card games like Vanilla and Bookish. After spending time like that, I wanted to spend time with family and friends more back home. Finally, connecting with nature was a really big part of the trip. Like climbing the rock formations behind St. Christopher's and seeing the sunset from that high up, or attempting to swim in a very strong river current. I appreciated nature in Utah more than before, and I wanted to take that back with me, especially for the rest of the summer.
Thank you guys, that was. Just give you next, I'm gonna have a couple of slides. The first is just a Google map. I want to talk about how we learned. Every part of the trip served to create spaces where we were either actively museum. It's been referenced a little bit. The museum that we stopped at allowed us, we had a predatory sales practices. This was a really powerful one. I want to talk about the relationship building that we had, starting with the more